Okay, so this is take two. I did try to explain a lot in the last one. Anyway, what I'm doing is making a tester video to see how the people like it. This is going to be posted to YouTube. And I made a promise to a community that I would do this because I played in a tournament. I beat a master, and I asked if some of the people in that community would like to see the game. So one of the reasons that I offer to do this is because I love video analysis, and sometimes it helps to get to know people better when you can hear their voice. Um, one of the many things that I would love to try to accomplish is to pull together something like a voice analysis session where you get on something like Discord or something and try to analyze your results or learn how to study chess or something. And you could do something like get on a mutual site. Most people these days get on Lichess, and you can move the pieces around, get on something like Discord, and then anything that has to do with voice always makes analysis easier on an online connection. And the ones that support multiple people, and if you can get, like, I don't know, let's say 5 to 10 people together to discuss a position, it would be very beneficial to somebody's improvement. Alright, so here's me for the most part. This is my name, I'm Jesse. My rating is around here. It currently kind of fluctuates between 1980 and 2020. So it didn't do that for very long. It went down a while. Over the past couple of years, I did see 1800 again, which I'm not ashamed to say. And it's done that a couple of times over the past couple of years. So here I've seen 1860. But recently I had I went down here, and then what happened was I went back up at some point, like right around here. I went back up to 1970, and then I went for a nosedive to 1940, and then that was my nosedive right before I jumped up to 2000. And this was my birthday celebration almost, because I'd never hit 2000 before, and I was going through a euphoric stage. And this was right before the World Open, and I actually wanted to play in the under 2000 the World Open. And I set a goal for myself that if my rating was over 2000 by the time the World Open came around, I was going to play in the Open section. And then if my rating was under 2000 when the World Open came around, I was going to play in the under 2000. Well, as you can see, the rating did go down under 2001 on this try, but it didn't go after, or it didn't go soon enough before the World Open. So when I played in the World Open, my rating was under 2000, but it didn't make it in time for me to sign up for the under 2000. So when I played in the Open, and I did quite well in the Open, as a matter of fact. And in future videos, if people like this stuff, I can post some of my games from that. I did manage to go pretty low. I did hit 1980, and from there I've been gradually bringing it back up towards 2000. I like to consider myself an expert, but you can decide for yourself. I don't really care what people think of my rating. This is near expert. You could call it a super A player if you'd like. I don't care. You could call me a low, weak expert if you like. I don't care. The goal of these videos would be to increase video analysis and hopefully get questions answered. So more than likely this is the group that I'm going to be posting to, and this might be a hopeless plug, but it's for this group, and I may post it to a couple of other groups, including one of my own. And what I'm hoping for is if you go to the main page of this group, I'm going to post it in here, and it's going to be something like answering questions like this, and it says, so learning the end game is the best way to start rather than learning openings. And this actually is the question that triggered my video, in honesty. I was going to post this video a long time ago, but I wasn't sure what the theme would be. And I like to go in themes, but I can do analysis based on what people are interested in. So if it's the opening that people are interested in, I can do opening videos to a certain extent. And this one in particular may show, I don't know what this person's rating is. If he's asking this question, 9 times out of 10 he's under 1700. So I'm not really sure if he is under 1700 or not, but this may help. And if he is under 1700, having somebody who is, markedly rated higher may help. And then people who are not masters also may help someone who's lower rated. So I'm not doing this video in terms that I'm a master. I'm doing this in terms that I am hopefully going to help somebody that may be lower rated than I am. And I am aspiring to find out if I can make master, because I'm an older player, and sometimes older players have a little bit of trouble with getting master class. Okay, so on to the meat. Why is this game important when it comes to answering this question right here? And the reason is because this was played about a year ago, I think. Let me double check. It was right around in here. I think it was this one. So 3/18. Oh, well, now that I think about it, it was less than a year ago. So it wasn't quite a year ago. And at the time, I was just learning how to play the Slav. And oh, darn it. Okay, so this is the book that I take my theory out of. I'll admit it's probably a little bit cheaper to purchase it digitally, because you get more out of it. But what I would recommend is usually just purchasing books that you are interested in, and which ones are you get the most out of. I bought the digital copy of this because if you purchase it through Everyman and you get the digital copies, I think you get like 3 different versions, including a PDF, a PGN, a Kindle version, a Nook version. You get a lot for how much it costs, and I like that. I don't condone the file sharing. Let's see. So that's the book that I get this out of, and I just started playing this stuff like a month before I played this tournament, and I turned my whole opening system around based on this system because I felt that well, one, I felt that I needed an answer to D4 in which was classical. And what that means is that when somebody plays D4, they're classicals. If somebody plays knight F3 first, and then they go into things like C4, like a ready, or they go into B3, or they play E3, and then they attack the center later. Those are usually people who are hyper modern. There's a modern class as well that mixes all that together, but everybody who tends to play the D4 and all that they're classical players. And what I wanted was some experience in playing a classical answer to D4, because what I used to play was hyper modern, and I have a theory which is based around some masters that say that that in order to master the game, you have to have experience in most versions of certain openings. You don't have to know them, but you have to have experience. So this is kind of an example of what somebody around the expert range knows about the Slav. Okay. You're going to see a note here, which is right here. You can read it. It's been up there for a while. This really was my best game, and it wasn't, the greatest played game in the world. And a lot of what I found out was that some of my opening mistakes were strategic, and they didn't have anything to do with the opening per se. So this here, by book, is the I figure doing this live like this shows what you might know, because I don't have to look at you shouldn't have to look into books to explain stuff. But this is the this is the start of the anti-Moscow. What I should do is kind of give you an example. So at this point, you can play here, and you're running into things like the Moran and the anti-Moran and all that, and I do need to look more into that stuff, but I am getting relatively good with it considering my level. So the anti-Moran, if I remember correctly, is queen to c2, and the reason that that's the anti-Moran is because it intercepts some of the ideas with the pawn capturing on c4. It tries to delay the bishop move a little bit, and the more that you can delay the bishop move in some lines of this, the more likely your white's going to gain a tempo advantage. So the other one is sometimes they'll play like b3 with this to try to make it to where you can't play d takes c4 with effect, but I don't really have a lot of problems with people that play b3. Sometimes I have a little bit of an issue with the people that play c4, and it's not really opening minded, it's more flow of the game that I have a little bit of trouble with people that are good with this particular advancement. So in this game she chose here, and this is the anti-Moscow, and the main line is h6. I'm I'm not going to say why, but both bishop takes and bishop h4 are played. And in general, I need to book up more on the bishop takes f6 line, which I think I might start doing soon. But I'm pretty good with the bishop h4 line. And the reason that's significant is because putting more effort into what you're weak at is sort of what may help me get 2000 and keep it, instead of, you know, jumping into 2000 and then dropping right back down to 1990 or something. So I'm a little scared of bishop takes f6 only because I'm not familiar with the positions like I should be. It's not that I should be familiar with move orders, it's that I'm not familiar with positions. Okay, so I played h6 per the move, and she played bishop h4. Now, what you should know about this person is that she's one of those monster people that I like to call monsters. And the reason that she's a monster is because she's a cute little like 11 or 12-year-old whose rating is almost 2300. So by my definition, that's a monster. So she played bishop h4. And the funny story about this game was I played her before in a Blitz tournament. And we have this little thing where we trash talk just a little bit because I trash talked her first, and she kicked my butt in the Blitz tournament. And then this game here, it was our first official USCF rated game, and I won. The second game was in the World Open, actually, and I lost a piece in the opening, so she gave me some pretty good payback, and I need to learn my lesson on that. So after bishop takes h4, the theory is to take the pawn. So you take the pawn. And the idea is that you're supposed to be able to keep that pawn if you make the right moves. And you can sacrifice a pawn back later. Not necessarily that c4 pawn, but let's say this g pawn here could be sacked back. Or you could sack the b pawn, because you're going to be playing that. So you could sack the b pawn back. And I'm not very good at these sack back yet, but I will be learning them. And I'm not comfortable 100% with giving back material right now. But I'm not having that bad of luck in these positions. So you capture this way to attempt to take a free pawn. And this is a legitimate gambit because white has to prove that they have play. Now, in this game, she played e4, which is pretty much the main line. And what they're hoping for is something like knight b to d7. And the reason that that's a hope is because they would like to get into something like the Botvinnik system, which is you play the knight, they play like e4, and then you play b5, and you're basically in or something like that. You're in like a Botvinnik system, and I don't want to be in a Botvinnik system because that's very wild and unpredictable. Well, it might be predictable, but it's very wild, and some people like the wild stuff, but I only like a little bit of wild. This is a little bit of wild, and I actually like the amount of wild that it has. So my move here is to play g5, and the thing is that the difference between the Moscow variation and the Botvinnik variation is that this pawn here is already pushed to e5 when this pawn moves to g5. So the knight can sack, and then this pawn can take, and then the bishop can take, and you have a pin on this knight. And there's a lot of theory based around the idea that this knight is probably going to be taken. And there's no piece lost. It's just you can't castle kingside, and there's a lot of tension. So sometimes I've seen this where people confuse the line, and they'll sack here, but it's not good. And I believe most of the games I've won, unless it's blitz, they'll play this in blitz, and they can get a time win on me, but that's because I'm not a blitz player. So this is my comment on this. When I went into this tournament, I was half asleep, half dead, because I think I was working the night before. I don't really remember. Sometimes I do that, and that's not really an excuse, but that's basically what happened. And let's see, so we go here. Here's the move that tries to solidify the pawn on c4. And play usually generates where black is trying to defend the center and white's trying to attack the center. She played queen to c2 here, and I wrote knight h4 may have been preferred under black's. I thought it was black's move, but I guess it's white's move. But that's not what that pertains to. That pertains to my move, because I played bishop to b7. And my analysis and my trainer's analysis, they all collaborate, and even the computer analysis collaborates that knight h4 here is preferable. And I had several moves where I could have played knight h4, and I think the book says it too. Technically that's not h4, that's knight h5. I don't know why I'm saying that. Alright, so let's see here. Oh, I can't edit it yet right now. Okay, so, well, it's not knight h4, it's knight h5. So, here's one where black has won 100% of the time with one game at knight h5. So knight h5 may have been preferable. It looks like bishop to b7 is played as the top played game with 22 games, but this is also in the Lichess database. I don't know what it says in the other ones, but for now let's just say that maybe knight h4 here may have been more of a preferable way of doing this. And my trainer who was training me at the time agrees with this assessment. So we'll put away the book for now. Knight bd7. See, now knight h5 is higher on the list. It's got 82% draws with somewhere around the 20% or the 15% wins and 5% losses. So yeah, knight h5 even here is preferred. And then I guess maybe what I played may have been the top, which is interesting. So according to Lichess, my move was the top. I didn't know that. With 228 games played, average rating 2400, which is good. Castle. There. Knight h5 now appears as the top move. And I believe I still missed it. Did I? Yes. Okay, so here, and then knight h5 here. So queen b6 may have been out of theory, or no. Oh, queen b6 is the second move. And it's got it listed with, it looks like it's better for white, because the white here is the 71% and this here is all draws with no wins for black. So it's probably, queen b6 probably isn't any good at all, even though I did win this game. This is more of a black win thing, and then knight h5 gives black an advantage, it looks like, which everything seems to agree with that. I'm not really here to really do some in-depth analysis on my opening. I'm just kind of teasing a little bit. So queen b6, while you could argue that it's a mistake. You can also argue that it didn't matter much at my level, especially considering her rating was like 2220. So, let's see. Rook d8. At this point, around where this queen went here, let's say if we go back, so up to about here, I was basically familiar with the whole position. When I played queen b6, that was kind of like a memory. It wasn't really strict, remember, you know, wasn't really strict knowing what the line was. This could have been argued that it was strict knowing what the line was. Okay? Bishop to b7 could have been considered strict knowing what the line was, even though technically I didn't. But after bishop e2, I knew that, you know, knight was pretty much the one that needed to go. And then castle, and then queen b6 was, well, now I'm alone. I don't have my theory books, and I can't look at them. So what is generally what I'm supposed to do? Okay? And I didn't want to play knight h5 yet, because, well, I didn't want to play knight h5 before knight bd7, because I didn't want the bishop to go to e5. So after knight bd7, I could have played knight h5 because the knight was there and the bishop can't move to e5 without being taken. So at this point, my thoughts were, yeah, I did look at knight h5, but I thought queen to b6 was more principled, because I was going towards putting my pieces on squares that are familiar. And that's usually how people think about openings sometimes. They don't look at strict openings all the time. You know, higher rated players, and I get this all the time, higher rated players don't look at the openings strictly. I know an FM who told me that you can't memorize an opening, you know, 20 moves deep, 20 moves wide. It's just impractical. So I don't really worry about a lot of the move order differences beyond move 11, because why? I can get used to some of how the moves are after move 11 or 12 or 13, and you know, if it sticks in my memory, then that's fine and dandy, but if it doesn't, then I don't worry about it. So queen to b6 might not be a losing move, but it might be inferior to knight h5, and I do remember that. It does stick in my mind. If I have an opportunity to play knight h5 in a position like this, I will definitely consider it. Now, moving on, this is also a move that is generally considered in this particular position, even though knight h5 was again called for. Some of the ideas try to get used to trying, like, if you notice, I'll be doing this, I think, throughout the game, but you know, you do things like queen b6 or queen a5, and then you place the rook on the open file, and then you play a6, and then you play c5. That's kind of the stuff that you're looking for. So here. Now I finally played knight h5. She plays d5, I take, she takes, and then one thing that you need to know that I understand is that d5 is played a lot, okay? And you don't take the d5 pawn, because that gives white the moves that they want to open up the position, because look at this guy. He's dead center in the middle of the board. And you got rooks that are just piling up against the king, so you're not ready to open up the position. That's what you need to know, is things like that. You know, you get past the basic openings, you know, and you get familiar with the openings. What you need to know in the opening is what to avoid and what to do. You don't need to know strict opening or anything like that. So at this point, this is my statement. I felt like I had an advantage here, or I had something that I could work with. There is an idea. Let's get rid of these guys. there is an idea where if she takes here and I take here, e5 can be played and then the queen can come in through g6. That's not necessarily a losing position or anything, and I think I go over it a little bit later, like around in here. But it's counterplay. It's something that can be played in this position that puts question to how good this line is. And if we move forward, this here is just setting up a battery that I can focus on, and I'm hoping that I can open up these two pawns here and maybe shove my rook down her throat or something. If I can plunk a knight right here without her moving that pawn forward, then I should have some form of an advantage. And you'll see that that's exactly what happens. So I played bishop c5. She played bishop f1. And this here, I don't know, I don't remember if this was it or not, but somewhere around this area, my trainer at the time was not very liking her moves. And it might have been this move or it might have been the next move. But d takes or I played g4, which was very much agreed that this was one of the better moves. So she takes to offset my g4 moves. So now I can't take on f3 because she can take with check, and that would probably put me at a disadvantage. And so she takes, and then I take. And this is the point that I was talking about earlier, where if they would have played e5, then there may have been a draw, perpetual check type stuff going on. And I think I analyze it where if they play e5 and I play here, then white may have some advantage or something like that. I mean, I don't like the position here. The knight could probably come through here like this, but I'm not really fond of the position at this point. And it fixes white's pawn structure. This is definitely playable. It would have made the game last a lot longer, and white would have had chances for a win. And I might have enjoyed this game just as much as I enjoyed this one. So I did add this line. And, you could decide if you agree with my analysis or not. I don't know. But, whatever. If we go back, she chose knight h2, which at the time I didn't agree with was really that strong at all. And I thought that it was losing. And I don't remember what the computer analysis says, but my trainer at the time was mentioning that he agreed with my assessment that this was probably a positional blunder and that black is taking over here. And before he saw the move, he said that this move was what he thought was the best move. So he was like saying, well, did you play knight e5? And I said, yeah, that's what I played. And he goes, great job. So I do like that sometimes when you talk to your trainer and you're going through the positions and the moves and stuff, and they're like, well, good job on this one, and you feel good about that. But knight e5, I think, just nicely solidifies the entire position, and there's nothing that white can do now. So I guess one of the main points is that when you go back to here and you go, so is learning the endgame the best way to start rather than learning openings? That's a beginner's question. And if you go back to this, I was out of book here. Literally. Move 11. I had no idea what I was doing in the book. I mean, I did. I had plenty of idea of what I was doing in the book, but you know, if you were to say, well, am I playing Bookline after move 11? No, I'm not. If we go back, I don't know when the book stops. My book stops at move 11, and I guess move 12 is where I really didn't have any games that are found at all. So mine's a fresh game after move 12. So I could have lied and said, yeah, this is a book move. Queen b6 is definitely it. And then I broke move after rook a d1 and rook d8. I knew this is my novelty and it wins automatically. But I don't need to fib about that stuff. I didn't know exactly what I was doing after move 11. All of this is how you play the middle game. And this is one of the reasons why I spoke the way that I did in the forum, was opening really isn't that important. It's how you play the middle game and how you know the end game. Some people argue that you need to know the end game as well as somebody like Pal Benko, you know, who is known to be a super grandmaster in the end games. Or who's another one? Fischer, who's not really like a super grandmaster in the end games, but when it comes to it, people want to emulate his end game play. Capablanca, Fine, Reddy, all those people who are all, you know, who's another one? Oh shoot, he was a world champion. Starts with an S. I know. Anyway, all those world championship contending players who you think you want to emulate in the end game, there's no way you're going to emulate them. They're the innovators. But, you know, having a thorough knowledge of the end game is good. And trying to study end games that come out of your openings, if you can, is good. But when it comes down to it, I don't even think this made it to the end game. I think I had this game won strictly in the middle game. And if you can do that, why worry about the end game if you can beat somebody in the middle game? I can probably count on both my hands and adding my toes on how many times my endgame knowledge has assisted me in drawing or winning an endgame. And I'm actually pretty good at the endgame when it comes to my level. Let's see. Queen d2, c8. When I played this move, we were in the process of analyzing this game, and there was some ideas that that I had that were very accurate, and then some ideas that I thought of that were more accurate than when I played. And I'm not 100% sure. I think I have it in my analysis here, which is after Queen f6, I played Rook e8, and I did realize that the suggestion of my trainer, which is Queen f8, may be better. And I think what I was doing was I didn't like potentially defending Queen takes e6 check and maybe Queen h6 after that. And I did try to calculate it a little bit, but I have to remind people, I think, that I was like dead tired at the time, and so my calculation abilities may have been hindered. But a lot of the fact that I could play Rook takes f2 did stop should have stopped the fear that I had. And this is one of the things I think that separates some people from becoming a master, is that when they're playing practically, they allow themselves to become fearful when they're playing higher rated players, whereas sometimes that is less a factor when you're already at the higher rated stage. I do lose games sometimes to lower rated players, and that's due to just thinking, oh, they're lower rated, it doesn't matter, and they probably won't beat me. That happens still to this day. I mean, I've been beaten by 1,700 players or something like that, just because I say, oh well, they're lower rated, it doesn't matter if they play a good game, they still can't win. I've done that, but it's a mistake and you shouldn't do it. So this is kind of the analysis. If they play king h1, bishop f takes f2, rook d1, bishop takes, and queen d6, and this is still technically like a advantage for black, but I think there was winning material type stuff. I mean, you can look at it and decide for yourself. I didn't want to calculate beyond here because of my condition of being tired. So I should, and one of the other things is that I really need to work on calculating this stuff. I can see it, but me sitting down and physically assessing a position that needs to be calculated, I need to work on. And I can see the stuff going, like I could see this. I can see that. And I can go through an entire line like that many moves, and I can assess it, but I do have trouble with it, and I need to work on it more, especially when I feel like I have an advantage and I just start getting lazy. I mean, one of the big reasons why I can't reach 2200 is because I'm lazy, and I need to learn how to not be so lazy. So I think this is somewhat of the final moves. Here's my attack. I felt that I was winning here, and I believe the engine believes it too. Yeah, it's more of like a close to a decisive advantage. You don't want to say it's winning at that type of score, and you don't want to say it is a decisive advantage. What you want to say is black has a significant advantage. And what significant advantage means is that in 9 times out of 10, that person who has the significant advantages will probably win. And that's how you look at these types of positions, because there's no sense in saying that you're winning because just because a computer says that you're up a knight. So what? I mean, you're not really winning until you have rook's advantage, and then sometimes you can't even convert that. So let's see. Rook f1, and then what did I do? Oh yeah, bishop to d4. Now, I do remember my trainer going over this, and he was like, Queen f7 is really good, and then she's supposed to play rook f1, and did you play bishop to d4? Yeah, bishop d4 you played. He got all excited about this, and I was getting excited with him, and it's kind of fun when you see that stuff. So at this point, I think my trainer didn't really like the move I played, because it may have I may have needed to do something else, and I think maybe he was looking at I think he was maybe looking at this, but he didn't say that my move was bad, just maybe inaccurate. So I played rook to g8, and I believe what that was trying to do was to get the queen off of the g file and off, or let's do this. It was to get it off here, and to get it off of here, and then I'll play knight to d3, and then and then try to play e5. And during the analysis, my trainer was saying stuff like, yes, that's exactly what you need to do, but maybe this was more accurate. And if I remember correctly, the accuracy was I think he liked the knight to d3 more. I'm not sure. So there's knight to d3. And he claimed that f4 was the only way to even worry about having any kind of counterplay. And then he followed up with, but if you play e5, then you solidify your advantage again. And so he was going through and he goes, yep, there's the f5, and then e5, and he goes, wonderful job. And we almost ended the analysis there, but I think we went a little bit further. But here's my thoughts. You can read it if you'd like. And one of the things that I wanted to do when I played this move was to get the knight off of this point. And the reason why is this bishop here is golden. Okay, he's sitting pretty on top of his d4 point. This pawn is more than likely lost if they want. If they want that pawn, it's more than likely lost. But this bishop is sitting pretty. So what I have to think about is that how am I going to activate this bishop here? Well, one way would be to try to attack the pawn. And that's what b4 is trying to do. It's trying to keep white off center, move this knight, maybe bring the queen up to c4, and maybe defend this pawn while at the same time attacking a2. One of the things is that the other idea was that if I keep him off center or keep her off center, then there might be reason to believe that she would try something else out of some kind of panic mode or something. Because right now white is being smothered. And all right, so I thought that after b4 it was probably a brilliancy, but I think I considered queen to c4 and my trainer preferred queen to c4. I think that's what happened. So knight to b1 is considered an error. I think the move was supposed to be just bring your knight forward. And you know, this is all basic stuff. I mean, when you're looking at a position like this, one of the things you have to consider is how are you going to open up this bishop, right? One of the things you have to consider is where do you place the knight? Okay, it might have been more active to play it to knight to a4. It might even been better to play knight to d1. I mean, there may have been a lot to say about that, but knight b1 is probably a losing blunder because there's nothing that can save this a2 pawn. And even then, I could still play queen to c4 and have complete domination over that knight. And if I can get c5 in, then I have a huge attack on the e4 pawn. So there's a lot of stuff. So queen takes, queen takes, queen takes b2, queen to c4, and we are attacking this rook. So one of the things that you have to watch out for is simple attacks like this. This is why a lot of my students, and yes, I teach chess, but a lot of my students who, you know, they try to, you know, play, and then they'll do well, but then they'll miss something like this where, you know, just out of nowhere the rook is hanging. And they'll do it in games that they should notice, right? So this move here is something that people should just notice, and then they just need to realize where to put the pieces. I think in hindsight it would have been better to place the rook to f8. but I played rook to d8, and I don't really remember my reasoning. So here's the only other counterplay that she could possibly have. And if I didn't have my move, which was c5, then the counterplay here may have been sufficient. But because of the move c5, it gives too much to black at this point. For one thing, I don't think there's anything that can stop the mate threat. So you got here, bishop takes, and then queen e6 and king c7. Now, at this point, I was almost afraid of things like queen e7. But I believe I could have just went like king to c6, king to b5, and king to c4 and all that. And yeah, maybe that's check. But anyway, I think I can hide my king in that direction. I probably could just hide it on b5. But I was kind of afraid of that. And I did sit down and calculate a little bit on whether or not I should play king c7 or b7, because this is the point where you need to be a little bit careful. Like, if she had played queen to d7, you don't want to do something idiotic and play there, because then you got queen takes with check. So I did have to consider that stuff. I played king to c7 after, I believe, about 5 minutes think, because when I was at the game, I had I think I had about 15 minutes left over at this point, and I had time to look at everything, because, you know, I felt that I was 100% winning here, and having 15 minutes on the clock, it doesn't matter if you take 5 or 10 minutes to make sure that you get the moves right. So I did, and I played king to c7 without fear at that point. And so she played knight f3 to try to get some out of this, and I took, she took, and then this is where the tactic appears, which obviously you can see it because it's sitting right there. I should have thought of the fact that there might have been a tactic that I could have left the video at. But anyway, the tactic is bishop takes f3, which if she takes, of course, then you take the knight, and there's no way of coming back to block. So if she goes to king to g7, then the queen rolls over to g1, and then after g1, king goes to h3, and then queen goes to h1 and it's mate. So there's no stopping the mate. I mean, this is literally mate. It's not like you win the rook or anything. This is literally mate here. So I believe she resigned there, realizing that it was mate in 1. So she resigned there. And if you notice, this didn't get to an endgame. Some other of my games do go to endgames, but this one didn't. And I'm going to say that a lot of my games, even though I'm pretty good at the endgame, a lot of my games don't make it to the endgame. I do have a game that I would like to show, and it's against a master, where I did lose the game, but I got into a winning endgame. And the only reason that I lost it was exactly what happened to this master here, which is we both played a game that we weren't, 100% aware of, and she just kind of blundered out of, playing automatic moves. Whereas the game that I played, I thought that I had it won no matter what, and I didn't consider other reasons why I would lose the game. So I guess what I'll do is I'll submit this as a finished product, and see if you guys like what I did. And if you want to see more, then I'll post more. On the other hand, if you want to see something in particular, I might be able to accommodate specific kinds. So like, if you want to go over an opening, I can try to go over an opening. If you want to see more of my games, I don't mind showing my Blunderfests. I do have quite a few Blunderfests. I may wait a little bit on a few of them, just in case. May explain at another time on that one. So I hope you guys like this, and I'm going to submit this to YouTube, and then I'll get the link out, and then just let me know what you think. See you later, guys.